First episode begins in a hotel lobby in Bangkok, Thailand. Peter is holding hands with an unknown woman. As they walk around, Peter suddenly asks if the man they're following has spotted them, and she says that he's checking for tails, so they need to keep acting like they're on their honeymoon. They continue to pursue him, waiting to see if he passes on more intel. They watch as another man approaches him to talk. They decide to split up. The woman follows the new guy and Peter stays on their target, Warren. That evening, they're still tracking the men and communicating over earpieces. Warren drops something in a plant pot, which another man comes over and picks up, a thumb drive. Peter pursues the new man down an alleyway. Suddenly, another man pulls a gun on him and starts shooting. Peter shouts over his comms that he's been spotted, and at the same point, Alice is too. Alice calls for an extraction, and Peter finally escapes the 4 people chasing him down. But as the pair meet at the extraction point, a gunman appears behind Alice, and before either of them have a chance, she's killed. With no choice, Peter runs and calls Night Action to help him. He's addressed as Copperhead and informs him that Hummingbird is dead. He asks to be put through to Reindeer, a woman called Catherine. He says that someone gave up their mission and the location of their extraction point. He tells her that Alice is dead and hangs up as the chase continues. Meanwhile, the man hands the thumb drive off to another man in the back of a car, who plugs it into a laptop. Inside is a file marked as top secret classified information. Peter manages to shoot one dead, but he's still being pursued. As he launches into the river, one shot hits, but he goes out of sight under the water. It's 1 month later. Rose Larkin is in therapy following the events of The Night Agent Season 1. The therapist suggests a different therapist as she feels Rose won't open up to her. Later, Rose is doing a presentation at work, and she receives a call from an unknown international number. A man says he's looking for Peter Sutherland. He says he's in trouble, and he wants to help him. While she questions the man, he won't answer and says he'll call back to see if Peter contacts her. She calls Michelle Travers, the president, at the White House. It cuts to Peter, alive but still wounded from the bullet. Meanwhile, Rose meets with Catherine at the president's request. She reveals that Peter works for her at Night Action, but that they've lost contact with him. They discuss the man who called her, but that Rose hasn't heard from Peter in 10 months since he left for Night Action. Catherine tells Rose to ring her if the man calls back, or if Peter calls her. As Rose tries to ask questions, Catherine tells her she's just a civilian, despite her help at Camp David, and that the president agrees. Back at work, Rose uploads pictures of Peter and runs facial recognition using her company's software. The company, Adverse, uses customer data to build an online profile that they sell to other companies looking to target buyers. Instead, though, she tweaks the code so that she can search security cameras to see if Peter's face has been picked up anywhere. In doing so, she's given a warning that she'll change the source code forever. She accepts and overrides. Elsewhere, Peter is still pursuing the target from Bangkok, Warren, and is in an apartment watching surveillance of a house. He also has a photo of Warren with what appears to be his son. On the security camera, Peter watches as Warren's son leaves his house with his mom, and Peter goes to find him in a white van. The camera pans to reveal he's in New York. Meanwhile, one search result comes back for rows of Peter in the background of a woman's Instagram photo at an urgent care, tagged in New York. She tracks him to 12th Street. Rose tells her boss her mom is having surgery in New York and needs to go. It turns out Peter is coaching basketball to Warren's kid, Ethan, in the park. They talk about his dad, but Ethan reveals that his dad doesn't get along with his mom or stepdad, so he doesn't see him often. Instead, he says they talk on Signal, a messenger app. When his mom comes to pick him up, Peter takes Ethan's phone. He messages Warren saying he wants to see him, and he says he can tomorrow if he can get away from his mom. Peter sets up a makeshift interrogation in a warehouse, assembling lights, a chair with handcuffs, and a recording device. Elsewhere, President Travers is being questioned by journalists about not endorsing Richard Hagan, her party's candidate for president, despite the election coming up. She says she's not running for re-election nor endorsing a candidate. She heads into a side room to meet with Night Action, which includes Peter's handler, Catherine. While 2 agents reveal things are on track, the president asks to speak to Catherine alone about Peter's disappearance. Catherine reveals that they know he's in New York, but that she has always had concerns about Peter and suggests that he was the reason Bangkok went wrong. The president says Catherine feels that way because of the history she has with Peter's father. Night Action also don't know where Warren is or what top secret information he stole, or who he sold it to. Catherine raises her concerns about Peter's mental state and reveals that Alice also raised concern over it the week before she died. The president says she trusts in Peter and that they need to find him. Rose arrives in New York and heads to a shelter to look for Peter. The man at the desk says it's confidential, but she mentions that Peter was in urgent care down the street and that they thought he was staying there. She begs the man for help, and he reveals that he knows Peter by the name David and that he was there, but he's gone now. She asks whether the man knew what David liked to do. Peter receives a message from Warren on Ethan's phone to meet that night. He replies and Warren says don't tell anyone. At the same time, his mom messages to say they'd switched phones at the court and to call her. Rose goes to the basketball courts and finds Ethan alone and asks about David. He says he's his coach and that he was meant to be meeting him, but he's a no-show. He also tells her that they are trying to find his phone, but it keeps turning off, so Rose offers to help track it. That night, Peter is waiting at Warren's meeting point. Warren is late, but then he texts to ask if he's there yet. He tells him to get on a bus round the corner and that he'll tell him what stop to get off at. Peter leaves his van behind to get on the bus. He says he'll call with details, so Peter answers and then cuts the call. Warren watches the bus as Peter gets off, but doesn't see him. Peter messages that he's in the pizza place across the street, so Warren walks towards it, giving Peter the opportunity to follow him. Unfortunately, Warren spots Peter following him and begins to run. He chases him into an abandoned theater, and a fight breaks out. Warren breaks free, and they continue the chase back on the streets. Peter quickly loses sight of Warren, and instead runs into Rose. She alerts him that there's another gunman pursuing him, and they both start to run.